You are listening to the Enormocast.
Hey there. Is the carefully curated, nonchalant image exuded by your layers of canvas work clothes no longer cutting it at the cliff? Or are those black yoga pants just a little too sheer for broad daylight? Well, Sportiva has the answer with climbing apparel with enough colorful panache to make you feel as sassy as Adam Andre eating a cannoli with Claudia Cardinale on a gondola in Venice. Now that's continental Adam. From a day at the Craig's casual to high-tech outerwear, Sportiva wants you to look good so you can climb good. Or well, their English isn't that amazing, but their new spring apparel line is. So check it out at Sportiva.com or your local shop, or even their new outlet store in Boulder, Colorado. La Sportiva, proud sponsor of the Enormocast.
We gotta get
Listen, where are you playing in town? Are you playing here?
We're doing the Normo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
a
big
house. We
place
sold
that
it out.
side of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold
What's
it
that,
out.
20,000
seats?
We really should.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing with you. We'll make it. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by Black Diamond Equipment, with support from Maxim Ropes.
And the fine folks at La Sportiva. And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enorma at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is March 24th, about 12:30 a.m., late night, early morning, depending on how you look at it. This is episode 125 of the Enormocast, a conversation with boulderer, highball boulderer, and budding trad climber Nina Williams. But before we get to that, there's a small production note, is that we got kicked out of my hotel room in the middle of this. We had overstayed our welcome and had to move locations about halfway through, a little over. And the only thing to note about it is that I changed from my kind of more elaborate computer-based setup to my portable, and there's a bit of a sound change. But don't be frightened by that. We moved over to Nina's hotel room, and we lucked out and had a James Lucas sighting. And so you'll get a small cameo from James Lucas. Okay, with that in mind, let's get to the interview. We had tried to do this a couple times and had to reschedule, so I'm very happy we finally got it done. And I was stoked that Nina is so forthcoming in this interview. We go down a bunch of different paths and learn a lot about her. So hope you guys enjoy it, and I will see you on the other side of the conversation with Nina Williams. Climbing girls and boys know that Indian Creek season is upon us, which means only one thing: more profile pics of people doing yoga in front of desert sunsets. But what it really means is we're talking about cams. Where the hell are we going to get enough cams? And with the introduction of the ultralights in 2016, the Black Diamond Camelot still reigns supreme when it comes to plugging up those mega splitters with more swagger than a crusty lifer lapping Incredible Handcrack for the 140th time. Wait, that might be me. Anyway, Camelots, ultralight or not, are the go-to cam in the Des and beyond. You know it, I know it, even the guidebook knows it. So if you want to bang out the last 10 feet to the chains with confidence, go to blackdiamondequipment.com or your local shop and get a few to throw on the gear pile as you and your friends get ready for yet another best day ever in the creek. And remember, when you support Black Diamond, you support the Enormocast.
I was doing some boozing last night, so.
Did you compete?
Mm-hmm.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
How was it?
It was interesting, actually. So I competed at the 2017 Dynamic last night, and I had a kind of a tough red point round in that I haven't been seriously competing for about a year. I've done some minor ones last year, but nothing too crazy. So Red Point Round was tough. I felt good for a little bit, had a big nosedive mentally, bounced back from that enough to make it into finals. And then the finals round last night, we had 3 boulder problems, and it's on-site format. So it's a whole big crowd cheering for you, and you have 4 minutes to try and do this one boulder problem. And the first boulder problem I got on, I did not make it off the start holds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
it's a little bit of a drag.
This is the second time it's ever happened to me.
He's like, come on.
Yeah, everyone's just like, and the MC is just like, yeah, cheer her on, folks. She needs it. And in my head, it's just 4 minutes of long torture. Just, I can't, oh my God. And then time is up and I'm just like, what can I say? I do this big shrug to the crowd, and it's embarrassing, You're just like, what? I'm supposed to be a professional rock climber. Right. I can't make it on the start holds of this climb. But luckily, the other 2 boulder problems that we had were a bit more suited to my style. Not that the first boulder problem was not suited to me, but it's a totally mental thing. And sometimes I just break down in on-site comps and I find one piece of beta that I'm convinced works and it's the only way, and I get tunnel vision and I just do it over and over again and it never works. So the other 2 problems were more suited to me. I was able to top both of them and I placed 3rd.
All right.
So
that's not bad for not getting off the first, for having like that beat down instantly. That's all right. You just endeared yourself with all of us, yourself with all of us, because there's many boulder problems where I'm just like sitting on the ground, like scooting my feet back and forth. What about this direction? No, what about this direction? And yeah, it's, that's one of the reasons that I can't boulder. But so what does your climbing look like right now? In terms of not right now, meaning because we're stuck in winter and you're probably climbing indoors a ton. But, in terms of your motivations, give me a feel for your competition versus your outdoor climbing versus, what those things are looking like right now. So
in general, I've been climbing for about 14 years and I've primarily done bouldering and competition climbing. But within the past 2 years or so, I started branching out from that. It started when I really got into highball bouldering. And there's just something about that mental control, that peace that one finds when you feel 100% on a climb way off the ground. And obviously there's always risks, rocks can break, a bird can go and shit on your head and you can fall off. But generally, when you're sure you're not going to fall, you achieve this tranquility. So I really got into highball boulders because of that. But I also realized it's not a sustainable career path as far as climbing. If I keep on pursuing highball boulders all the time, I'm going to get hurt at some point. So I dove a little bit more into traditional climbing because I felt that same mental control when you're up way off the deck and you've got a piece, by your feet that you don't really trust, and the pieces below that you're not really sure about, and it's really scary. But you still need that mental control to get through that. And it's still technical rock climbing. So, that being said, I'm still pursuing highball boulders and trying to find a balance between going after trad climbing and then getting up high on boulders without trying to kill myself either. Yeah, it's the balance is a bit hard to find right now.
Yeah, well, let me ask you a few questions about highball bouldering. I don't think it's ever come up on the show. Basically, you're climbing above pads with spotters, but you get to a point where, even with that stuff, there's probably a good chance that you're going to break something, miss the pad or come stumbling off of it, all those sorts of things. So it's sort of like, I guess you might think of it as, I guess you could possibly die off the top of one of those Peabodys, but likely you're going to live, but you're going to mess yourself up. Right? Is that kind of
yep.
I guess where it's like soloing bouldering, but not a 2,000 foot for sure you're going to die kind of drop.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've always been curious, do you guys, girls, gender neuter, do you down climb a lot, or is there more of you get to maybe your sort of perceived into the no fall zone, and if you don't think you got it, you jump off beforehand, or what does it look like when you're in that zone? Because personally, I've always been a little bit scared of bouldering, partially because for those of you playing the back in my day game Drink, that we started bouldering without pads. It was the John Sherman, I think everybody got it from the Bloussards in Fontainebleau. Is that you had a little carpet. You had a square carpet, which was to wipe your feet. You also tried to land on it because it was like, slightly softer than the dirt or rocks, but it was really to wipe your feet, and then you were off and running. And so those jarring falls are still in my head. But also I've aged out of like even jumping off the top of the climbing wall in the gym to where that kind of hurts. So anyway, there's no way in hell I'm ever going to highball boulder as like a specific pursuit. I might make a mistake and get so high off the ground on something that I start to get totally scared. Yeah. But anyway, so talk to me about highball bouldering. Is there a threshold? Do you jump off? Do you get down, good at down climbing?
So for me, so there's a few different ways to approach highball bouldering. Some people go ground up ascents where they don't check out the holds at all. They do it kind of the old school way. And some people even use minimal pads. They just want to do it in this really pure fashion, which I think is totally badass and respectable and awesome. That being said, I don't do that. I'm a full supporter. For me, getting on a rope, checking out the moves, climbing the whole thing, especially if it's really tall, doing all the moves with a rope and knowing 100% that I can do that. Because the reason why I highball boulder is not necessarily for the danger, but it's for that complete control of feeling safe up there, of knowing that I have physically done the moves. Like I know it's possible for my body. So if it's possible for my body, it's possible for my mind. So it takes away that physical uncertainty and puts it all in my head. And it's like, well, your body can do it. Is your mind up for it? Right. So when I get on a really tall climb, there haven't been too many moments where I've felt that uncertainty and been like, oh, I need to down climb. That's actually only happened once. And when that did happen, I was actually trying to ground up. I didn't really check out the holds on a rope. It was a new climb. It hadn't been done yet. So all the holds were uncertain and sketchy. I'd like check them out from above. You were able to kind of brush them, climb up this other side and check them out. But, yeah, I got up to the top, felt really uncertain, and because I didn't know if I could do the moves or not, I was like, just like had to down climb and freak out and fall, and it was really unpleasant. The fall hurt, it kind of sucked. Yeah. And I was like, well,
I can imagine it kind of sucked.
Yeah, I was like, that wasn't very fun. I don't want to do that again. Right. So I definitely highball boulder, not for that not for seeking out that sense of danger, but again, for feeling safe.
So in a sense, like historically, then it's sort of like it's kind of like head point bouldering in a way too, right? In the sense that with those bigger leads, which actually, that head pointing really is something that you think of the gritstone. A lot of them, they even debate like whether it's just worth bouldering it, because they're only this high or that high. But so we're talking about kind of a rehearsed style that gets you sorted out before you get in up there. But let me ask you this: have you ever done done your work, done your prep, and then got up there and been like, whoops, I didn't quite get where I needed to be on this thing? Or have you mostly like hit it out of the park where you got it wired enough that like, okay, I've got this thing? Yeah.
I've generally gotten it pretty wired. The one time where it wasn't 100% wired was probably the one climb that I should have for sure had gotten it wired, and that was Footprints, this V9 in Buttermilk's on the Grandpa Peabody boulder. The thing, it's probably about 55 feet or so, maybe 60. I'm not entirely sure. It could be short, a little bit shorter, but basically the V9 part is at the bottom. It's all the hard moves are like only 15 feet off the ground, and
that's how I used to solo in Joshua Tree.
15 feet.
I'd find the routes. I knew like, oh, the crux is right here. Like, and then the rest is like cruiser.
Yeah. Those are my favorite types of high balls, when the hard part's at the bottom and then you just cruise on up. So the first day I worked footprints, one of my friends had a top rope up, and I was like, well, I might as well just go see what the top's like. So I top roped it once, did it all clean. It felt, pretty easy. The moves up top can't be harder than V2, V3 absolute max maybe. But I top roped it once and felt good. Oh, cool. But I hadn't figured out the crux moves at the bottom. There's this really big dyno move that I didn't really have much faith in myself in doing. So I came back the next day. Some more folks were working it. There were a bunch of pads, and I thought, I'll work out the crux moves, figure out the beta. So I found a way around the dyno and did the move, and I thought, oh, it'll go. Like this thing is actually possible. And then I thought, well, okay, I'll just try it from the start, see where it goes, see how I feel through the crux. And as it goes, I did it from the start and found myself at the lip, staring up at the head wall, and I knew that I'd only done it once on top rope. And I thought, well, there's only one way to go from here, because at that point, once you're on the head wall, you're already really far off the ground anyways. And I thought, these moves aren't bad. I've done it before. It was that mentality that came into mind. It was like, you've done these moves before, you can do them again. They're not hard. So I made my way up, and then I was about 3/4 of the way up the wall, and there's this one little foot move that I had forgotten, that when I was on rope, I didn't think about it at all. And if I had been 2 feet off the ground, or 5 feet off the ground, or 10 feet off the ground, I also wouldn't have thought about it. But because I'm 50 feet off the ground, every little detail is enhanced. So when I am 50 feet off the ground on footprints, and I had to do this tiny little foot cross on a glassy little piece of rock, I had a moment of like, oh my God, like don't freak out. And it's not, and it wasn't this inner monologue of like, oh my God, don't freak out. I'm scared. It was this really calm sense of just like, it's hard to explain. I was breathing. I could feel my breathing in my head, and I felt the nervousness start to expand in my chest. But I just thought the only phrase that went through my head was, "You've done this before. You've done this before. You can do it again." And also this pure knowledge in my head of, you cannot fall. Like, you can't fall right now. You will not allow yourself to fall. Like, and that's it. That's what's not going to happen. So I made it through the move totally fine, and got to the top. And then once I got to the top, all this adrenaline just released, and I started hyperventilating and being like, oh my God, I did it. It's so exciting. And yeah, that's been the only time where I've had a moment of doubt.
Do you think that, it was palpable and noticeable when you got to the top. Do you think observers had any idea there was this like brief moment up there? Like, did your spotters sort of like expand outward, like, oh my God, how are we going to catch this girl from 50 feet?
Oh yeah.
Moment? Okay.
So the buttermilks, it's always kind of busy. It's always kind of busy there.
It all got quiet.
And there were people watching me, and I had some folks come up to me afterwards, and they were like, yeah, we saw you pause at the top, and I was definitely like, I think my leg or my arm was shaking a little bit when I made the move. I don't actually remember feeling that at all, but it was noticeable.
Sure.
And folks went up to me afterwards. They were like, yeah, that was a little scary. And I was like, yeah, I was like, sorry.
People had their cell phones out, like 9-1. Oh no, delete.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Well, that's cool. Good for you. Well done.
Yeah,
I'm glad you're still here.
Me too.
In one piece. So well, cool. That's interesting, because I guess I hadn't even really personally made those, or knew that there were these distinctions even in highballing, where there were these like, these sort of like, okay, this is how it has to be done. But I guess when you get into playing games with climbing, which is kind of what we're always doing, but we've got all these self-imposed rules, whether we're rope climbing, sport climbing, track climbing, there's all these things you're supposed to do, not supposed to do. So, and when you get into that kind of stuff, yeah, I'm sure there's like ways. Do you feel peer pressure? In terms of like having one style versus another? I mean, are the no pad like ground uppers smarmy about their style, or do you ever feel anyone pushing you towards that?
I think that people that do ground up style are very proud of that.
Yeah.
As they should be.
Well, I mean, this isn't just this is across climbing. I mean, style battles.
Yeah, right? Style and show. I think people, if they feel that their style is pure and awesome and great, they're very proud of it, and they like to be vocal about it. That being said, I haven't felt any peer pressure from others to do ground up, because in the end, it's my decision. It's someone else's personal decision to do what they want to do. And you don't want to be the one responsible for telling someone else, hey, you should do a ground up scent, and then having that person or me or whatever go and like break their leg or die or something. Nobody wants that responsibility. Right. So I think it's cool for people to be proud of what they do, to be open about it. I don't think it's cool to be peer pressured, to feel peer pressured or any of that. No.
Absolutely. I was sort of curious.
Yeah.
The waves of social media and which we might talk about a little bit later, but yeah, there's it's always been there, but the internet can like heighten a lot of those arguments and peer pressure and criticisms and things like that. So, but that's cool. I mean, if you're up there 50 feet off the ground without a rope, you got to respect that, regardless of how you ended up there. I think so. Oh, I wanted to ask you real quick too about you mentioned sort of expanding into trad climbing. You sort of have kind of like, I feel like, and you can correct me on this, like it's almost like the new kind of traditional entry into climbing. The climbing gym as a kid, and then eventually having opportunities to climb outside, having to decide where to put your efforts, where to that's. I have my own old guy version of how people used to get into climbing, and that's, now I think what happened to you is much more standard. So as you look to get into big climbs, more climbs that are focused on gear and technical things with ropes and everything else, what is your pathway into that? Are you climbing with people who are showing you the ropes? What's going on with that? Like, as you've chosen to be like, I'm going to do that now. So
when I was growing up in the climbing gym, my coach had a really big influence as far as being a mentor. So when I wanted to get into traditional climbing, I thought, well, I'm going to need someone more experienced than me to teach me what to do. Because I don't feel comfortable going out and getting into something that I can't get myself out of. So lately, I've been hanging out with James Lucas and having him show me around Yosemite. He was someone that came to mind first because he has so much experience in Yosemite. And I went to Yosemite for my first time a few years ago, and it was fucking awesome. Like, so rad. I'm sure everyone who's been to Yosemite knows what I'm feeling. It's just an incredible place. So I thought, okay, I want to spend a lot of time here. I want to learn how to climb here. I love the climbing. I love the scenery. Who can I climb with that has enough experience and is someone that I enjoy hanging out with? And James was one of the first people that came to mind. So yeah, getting into something new, like traditional climbing, having a good mentor is really important to me. The reason I asked that is that, it's not such a clear path anymore. And, I've mentioned in the past that, like, I feel like the sort of mentorship regime is strained because of there's like a choke point of all these people coming out of the gym wanting to learn this stuff. And, there's not that many people that are willing to kind of take their time to bring somebody along. But anyway, so I was just kind of curious about that. Let me go back to your youth. Where did you grow up? So I grew up in New England. I'm from Rhode Island originally, but I have climbed all around New England. Right. Okay. And, like I said, sort of a youth, kind of standard youth entry into the climbing. But you recently wrote an article in Rock and Ice that I thought would be an interesting place to talk about a little bit about youth climbing, what it did for you, things like that. If people haven't read it, what was it called? Something, it had the word cheater in it. It was literally called The Cheater. The Cheater, right. And it was a story of you fudging your cards at bouldering comps, getting caught, and, the sort of shame
the learning process, the kind of disdain from the community that came out of it, at least for a moment, which I thought was like, it's right on the cover. It's like Nina Williams cheater, and then I was like, whoa, okay, cool. And it's short, and you kind of go through this thing, and I thought there was like, there's weight to it. There's some epiphanies in it, but at the same time, when I was done with it, being, 45 years old and having taught high school, and I'm like, yeah, like, kids, teenagers make those sorts of decisions all the time. When I would talk to parents and they would be defending, the fact that the kid said, oh, I turned that paper in, and, they're like, they told me they turned it in. I'd be like, look, he's 15. He lies to you for sport. Like, it's like what happened. So, there was weight to it, but at the same time, like, I was at the end of it, like, this is such a forgivable thing. But then I started to think about it and just think about youth climbing in general. So can you talk maybe a little bit about that? Although I don't think we need to get too much into the details of the article, but talk a little bit about what that youth climbing and that team climbing did for you positively, but also did you, was it part of like the pressures of acceptance that like pushed you to kind of play those games and fudge your things and stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. So long story short, with the article, I essentially wrote in initials and a judge's card to get higher points on a competition. I got caught.
No, you got away with it once, right?
Oh, yeah. So
and then you got caught.
So I cheated in a regional competition to get to nationals. Didn't get caught. Made it to nationals. Got fourth. Yay.
How old were you about?
I was 14.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then because I got away with it, I continued to cheat. And then got caught eventually. Had all these repercussions. I had to write letters to my coaches, my teammates, my competitors, and my gym employees, and I had to read them out loud. I had to return my trophy and my jacket from nationals. I was banned from the next sport climbing season, but I had to volunteer in all of the competitions. I had to belay.
Shit.
Yeah, it was a rough time.
To wear a big red C on your chest.
Yeah, I felt like it. I felt like I was branded in my forehead.
Right. Well, good. I mean,
but it was a really good thing that happened to me, because if I hadn't been caught, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at in climbing today. I probably would have quit climbing, or something else would have happened, something bad. I don't really know, but it was a very good thing.
Right, because it was probably. I mean, you're not like a horrible person, so there was probably this ounce of poison in it every time you did it anyway.
Yeah.
Whether they'd have caught you or not.
Yeah.
And so you'd have walked away from climbing because it would have had this like poison feel to it eventually.
Yeah, for sure. And it all started within myself, partly because, I was on this climbing team, and it was a really good experience for me, having my friends, having my coaches. But part of it was my climbing team they were all men. They were all boys, all men. I had one other female teammate, but we kind of had a falling out after all of this happened for various reasons. That's kind of irrelevant. But anyways, my whole climbing team were guys, and I felt this inner pressure to prove myself, that I was just as strong as them, and stronger even. And I had to prove to my coaches that I was a good climber. And it wasn't anything from my coaches or my parents being like, you have to win, you have to do better than you are now. It was all coming from inside of myself. So because of that, I felt like if I could prove I was just as strong as the guys, if I could prove I could hang, then I would be more readily accepted. I would be popular. I'd be like the cool girl, and then that's where the uncertainty came into play of like, oh, well, am I as cool, or am I as good of a climber if I don't do well in this competition, if I don't do this climb, will they think I'm not cool? Will they start to not like me? And it's silly things. I'm a teenager, right? So all these different things going through my head, which caused me to be like, well, just this once, I'll write in someone's initials on this climb that I basically did, right? I did all the moves. I just fell off the end. I can do it. Right. Yeah. I basically did it. I was brown pointing. Side note, that's a term I'm trying to coin, brown pointing, which is when you do all the moves in your head head, and you play it out in your mind. You're like, oh, I basically did that climb.
Okay,
You brown pointed it.
Bag pointing, I don't know, blur pointing.
Yeah, well, you're brown pointing because you're so full of shit, right? But yeah, so so it really all stemmed from that desire to be accepted and to be cool to my peers. And it was all this inner pressure that just kept on building up and building up.
So in terms of, again, like, let's talk about that, the climbing team thing. Sports in general, youth sports, they've always come packaged as this, like, it's good for kids. They learn teamwork. They learn leadership. They learn blah, blah, blah. Like that's been the theory for, actually youth sports aren't even 100 years old in terms of the way we do them now. It was actually seen as like, there was a point where there was this big social movement that kids are soft and life is too easy, as kind of as like a more of a middle class and sort of a leisure class like came up, and that was sort of, that's always been the theory behind them. Like, let's toughen these kids up, and they're all a bunch of soft little dough kids, right?
Yeah.
So, and as a teacher, I was a teacher, high school teacher, and I've always had a slightly either ambivalent or a little bit contrasting idea, because I've often seen like all those things that come out of sports and teamwork and all those things being really good, but then there is that other side of the coin, which is this pressure, whether it's imagined or a lot of times it's real. Coaches yell at their kids. They, like, this is how you motivate people, and 9 of the kids are being motivated and one of them is taking it completely the opposite way. So, and I also, a lot of times found that there was an elitism to some of the kids that were on these teams, and every day they're being told how great they are, and while they're disregarding everything else in their life. So what do you think, positive, negatives on the whole? Was the youth climbing like a great experience for you, a fair to middling experience? What do you think about that? And then also, is it good for like teenage girls to have these pressures on them? What's your kind of ideas in terms of youth climbing, whether it was great, bad, somewhere in between?
Yeah. So from my personal experience, it was really good after I got caught. Before I got caught, it was pretty rough. I was put in a dark place. I wasn't climbing for the right reasons, and I had to learn that lesson the hard way. But once I got caught and I realized what I was doing, it was, the pressure not entirely disappeared, but it's almost like I took that part of myself and I locked it away. And I thought, I just don't ever want to revisit that aspect of myself again, because I don't ever want to feel the need to cheat. And that being said, I think it affected the rest of my youth competition climbing into my competition today, in that I never felt that burning desire to win or to be the best or to beat everyone else, because I didn't want to access what I saw as that dark part of myself. So the rest of my youth climbing competitions, I had placed well in comps. I've podiumed fairly often. But I've never been like the winner. I've never been driven by that need or desire to win. Compared to youth climbers of today, I think that's a much higher pressure now, especially now that climbing is getting into the Olympics, and indoor climbing is seen more as or climbing in general is being treated more as a sport versus a lifestyle. And I think the youth climbers today feel that difference a lot.
Yeah, so then you transitioned at some point into either wanting to or just naturally into being a professional climber. What did that look like in terms of just your experience with it coming out of, high school? Did you go to college? What did your sort of post like young competitive world look like?
Becoming a professional climber wasn't ever something I tangibly thought about in my mind. I wasn't like, I'm going to grow up to be a professional climber necessarily, but I knew that I wanted to climb for the rest of my life and be involved in professional climb I wanted to be involved in climbing in general. Right. So that's all I wanted to do. It was just this evolution of, well, I want to keep climbing. How are what are things I can do to keep climbing all the time.
Right.
And it's like, well, I have to make money somehow. How can I make money through climbing? And then it evolved into this lifestyle of, okay, I'm going to keep representing brands. I'm going to get sponsors. I need to start making money. How can I start making money through my brands? And I just develop relationships with these companies that support my adventures and support my dreams, which is, super, super awesome. And not really typical. It's not becoming a professional climber isn't easy in a lot of ways, because it's not, we don't make a lot of money. We have to compromise climbing for our jobs, ironically. Right. And we're trying to market to a bunch of people that do have to pay for gear. So it's been quite the balance going from, just like a teenage climber in New England to a professional climber out here in Salt Lake.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the pressure of being a professional athlete. And you just sort of explained your relationship with your companies. That's what makes you a professional athlete. But what about the pressure from the public? We've got the internet, is sort of this like lurking demon at times in terms of professional climbers or any climbers. We talked a little bit about that with the highball discussion. Social media, whether you're making it or you're getting the comments that reflect on it. Like, what about that pressure, not only to perform, to be honest, to be authentic, to do rad shit? Like, you had this sort of fraught relationship with pressure when you were 14, right, as 99 out of 100 teenage girls do, or teenage boys for that matter. I think I've always thought like 13, 14 is really rough for girls. 15, 16 is like a little bit more of the time for boys. But anyway, now that you're an adult, but you're in this, fairly pressurized business in a small way. But climbers are really ready to leap on, inauthenticity, if you're not giving a nuanced look at your climbing, what's the pressure there to perform, and how are you handling that now that you're an adult?
Yeah.
But it's also kind of higher than it was when you were 14.
Oh yeah, the stakes are definitely a little bit higher. This is, what I've turned into my career. So right. Definitely matters a lot more. But I always adhere to that lesson that I learned when I was 14, which was...
Say that again. I always...
Bless you. I always adhere to that...
Just announcing here.
God, James, be quiet. Yes, I always adhere to that lesson that I learned when I was 14, which was to just climb for myself and to keep that motivation true. Because what happened when I stopped climbing for myself, when I started climbing for everyone else around me, that's when that insane pressure started to evolve. And that's when I started to get that desire to cheat and to lie. So when I start feeling the pressures from the outside world now, as far as, trying to be authentic, trying to go after big goals and to, stay inspiring people and to keep my sponsors happy, it's like, okay, why am I really climbing? I'm trying to climb for myself. What makes me happy? What do I want to do? Because if I start thinking, what do other people want me to do? That's where the authenticity is lost. Right. And then it's all for nothing.
Right.
So as long as I just have to keep reminding myself, what am I getting out there for? What is making me happy? Because that's how I'm going to inspire other people.
Let me push a little harder. That's definitely, the philosophy to live by, the climbing for yourself versus your sponsors versus what other people want. That's always been the kind of holy grail. And yet, like a lot of life philosophies, you're not always 100% able to toe the line. So with that said, as your overriding philosophy, are you that able? I mean, how are you with rising above it? Like, the internet can get after you. People can, be downright mean or question your motivation. And if you're like a monk, in some monastery in Tibet, yeah, it probably doesn't bother you. But, what do you do with that? Are you really able to just be like, no, I'm not reading it? Or do you look at it? Do you internalize any of it? I've been wanting to ask actually a lot of professional climbers this, because it can be, it can be another pressure.
Are you talking specifically about the internet or just like anything?
Well, if you're putting out social media, which you're if not required to do, I mean, it's part of your job. Most of the time there's feedback on those sorts of things. If you're in magazines, and these days it's through the internet. It used to be like letters to the editor or whatever, which was like much nicer because it wasn't so instantaneous. So, are you by and large getting good feedback when you get some troll on you? Can you just like throw it off? Or
to be honest, I have been fortunate to not have had to deal with too many trolls.
Okay.
And this is on the internet specifically.
Right.
Like I get a lot of positive feedback from everything that I post. I have some people being like, oh, this is posed, this is fake, you're not really up there on the wall, which it's one comment out of hundreds,
right?
And that's enough. It's really easy to focus on that one negative comment, but then you just look at all the other positive ones and you're like, whatever, that's just one.
Right.
But at the same time, it's important to not totally disregard the negative comment because it's feedback, right? Negative feedback it can be as constructive as positive feedback.
Right.
So when people start saying, "Oh, this looks posed," or "This is fake," or like, you're not actually training or doing any of this stuff, it's like, well, why do they think that? Like, what is making them doubt what I'm doing?
Right.
And I try and think about it constructively because everyone on the internet, it's so easy to be a troll. It's so easy to be mean and to just say whatever the first thing comes to mind. And I've been guilty of that. I've totally been a troll on the internet and just said mean shit. It's like that. And I'm not proud of it. It's definitely, there have been times where I've been in a weird emotional place and I take it out on other people on the internet. But then I take a step back and I'm thinking, why have I said these things on the internet? So when the positions are reversed, I think, why are these people saying these things to me? And how can I change that in a way that's positive for me? Any negative stuff on the internet, I always take everything with a grain of salt, and I try and not let it affect me too much emotionally. It's just like take it all as logically as possible.
So kind of on a different tact, sort of a big broad question is, why climbing? Like, why do you think of all the paths, you could have taken when you were a kid and the things you could do, for you personally, what is it about climbing that captured you and still continues to capture you? And maybe it's different. Maybe your motivations when you were 12. I mean, of course they're somewhat different, but maybe the basis of them are different and it's evolved in a certain way.
Actually, this is kind of interesting. It's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, in that I first got into climbing and started climbing because I was good at it. I had tried soccer, I had tried ballet, I was swimming, and I tried climbing randomly. And out of all the different sports I was dabbling in, I was naturally and immediately good at climbing. So when my mom finally said, "Hey, you got to pick one sport," I went with the thing that I was good at because it gave me validation, and it was easy for me at the time. And I got into bouldering because it was the most accessible. It was social. I get to hang out with my friends, and it was all very easy for me. Easy to get into competitions. Not easy necessarily to compete, and not easy to train, but it just all came so naturally, and I felt like I didn't have to work as hard for it, as opposed to something I was bad at, like basketball or soccer or anything like that. And that's honestly followed me throughout my whole climbing career until very recently, when I started getting into highball bouldering and facing those fears a little bit, and then into trad climbing, something that I'm not naturally good at, something that I'm totally new at, in fact, and had to learn kind of from square one. Just this concept of needing something more fulfilling from my climbing. I started getting a little bit, I don't think bored is the word with bouldering, but I just didn't feel fulfilled. That's the best way I can really describe it. So when I started seeking out trad climbing, getting to the top of a 5'10", crack in Yosemite or Indian Creek, number-wise and grade-wise, it doesn't seem like very hard compared to like a V13 boulder or V12 boulder or whatever. But I felt so much more satisfaction fighting that because it was hard for me and I had to really work at it. So getting that reward and experiencing that in my climbing is something I'm really striving towards right now.
So when you're thinking about that motivation, do you sort of see yourself, expanding that to like big kind of adventure climbing? Mm-hmm. Is that sort of in your like living in the dirt out in the boonies kind of life, or at least trips and adventure? Is that something that like is in your makeup somewhere?
Yeah, for sure. For whatever reason in bouldering, I was never interested in first descents. I don't know, for a number of reasons. Because bouldering is so accessible and there's so many bouldering areas out there, there's so many problems to do, why not go and do them? Why go out and search for something new? And that's like the lazy part of me talking. But there's something about big walls and something about first descent traditional lines or sport lines, not even sport lines, more like the big mountains where there's this big crazy adventure waiting to happen, and I want to be able to look at a mountain and see a crack and think I just want to go out and climb it. And I know that putting up first descents in that atmosphere are 1,000 times harder than putting up a bouldering first descent. Mm-hmm. But that's also what's kind of attractive about it. It's you have to put so much work into this one objective, and it's really, really difficult, but I think the feeling of reward is so much greater.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about gender, and maybe it's always been a big debate, but it seems like there's a lot going on right now with talking about sort of women's place in climbing versus men, all that sort of thing. And in anybody sort of looking at it objectively, there's gender issues in our world, mm-hmm. outside of climbing, inside of climbing. Yeah. But I think like right now we're in as good a spot as we've ever been in terms of opportunities for women professionally as performance athletes. I don't know about in the rest of the industry, and I ask women climbers when I have them on here a lot, is that sort of role model or the gender issue, it sounds like it kind of popped up again back when you were a kid. Mm-hmm. That wasn't that long ago, you're middle 20s right now. Mm-hmm. Is that something that's on your mind in terms of your professional face or your personal beliefs? Or on the other side of the coin, which I get sometimes, are you just a climber and you're like, I climb with dudes, I climb with girls, I don't care. It's not something I want to sort of deal with. Where do you sort of live on that spectrum?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's on my mind, because I have had a lot of female climbers go up to me and tell their stories and say, I felt really intimidated in the gym. Mm-hmm. I feel like I can't relate to male climbers because I don't have their physique or their type of beta. And women tell me that they feel inspired by other female climbers because we are women, which is, totally makes sense, right? Yeah. Females inspire females and vice versa. And the whole concept, I feel like there's two opposing sides, right? There's one side that are saying the FFA the first female ascent needs to be recognized because other women need to be inspiring women, mm-hmm. and we're different from men, and it's just not, because you're a man you just can't understand what it's like to be a female and you can't understand our perspective, blah blah. And then there's the other camp that are saying, well, there's equality, right? Men and women are equal. There's no reason why women can't climb as hard as men. Women are just holding themselves back with this mindset, right. And we all just need to treat each other the same. And I think that both sides are correct and incorrect. It's it's not a matter of right or wrong. Mm-hmm. It's about taking mindsets from both camps and combining them in the middle. So for me, I do know that women are physiologically different. We have different bodies. We have different physical makeups, and that's just science. That doesn't mean that women can't climb as hard as men. That's already been proven wrong, in fact. But it also means that women, it's totally understandable that women feel intimidated by men because the majority of women do not climb as hard as men. We're not all Alex Puccio. We're not all Ashima. So when women feel intimidated by men and say that they don't feel equal, that's something to take into account.
Right.
And I want to help women feel comfortable and confident in themselves to where they don't feel intimidated at the gym or at the crag going into a group of men and being like, oh, well, I don't climb as well as these men. I don't feel as strong. Maybe I shouldn't climb them. No, like, you take care of yourself. You know, you can be equal in these men mentally if you just go out and just strut your stuff. You know, it doesn't matter physically. It's all mental.
They'll feel great, especially bouldering. They'll feel fantastic.
Yeah. After
a good solid session with Kalous, like you'll feel really good about yourself that you're climbing really well. So that's kind of the key. And I'm joking, but you know, I hear about this this intimidation, right? And I say I hear about it because I can't necessarily put myself into their shoes, but in some ways I can, because you know, any sport, especially these individual sort of where individual performance is super important. There's you go into a scene with dudes, and maybe this is the same with women, but there's a pecking order. And so it's like, I feel for women walking into this group of dudes and kind of feeling intimidated, but the truth is that the dudes walking into the groups of dudes feel intimidated as well. And I think the problem is that when you're talking about differences, is that mindset is something that we're used to. Like, we're used to being there and being like, okay, even if it's not overt, you're like, okay, that guy's really good. I'm probably like, okay, sort of in his camp over there. We're doing it, but we've been doing it since we were 4 years old. And I think that's one of the big problems, is that it's not, I don't know, and maybe you can speak to this, but I don't feel like it's this, I know it's not the same kind of mindset that a woman walking into a group of women necessarily has. I think there's tinges of it, but it's like pretty overt with dudes. Right. Whether you're on the soccer team, whether you're at a business meeting, I mean, that's kind of how we operate. Yeah. And so, there's this dissonance that's happening where I could walk in with that woman who's feeling really intimidated, and if we were able to talk about it, I'd be like, I'm intimidated. These guys crush. Like, of course I'm intimidated. Yeah, but they honestly, take it one way and I take it another way.
But women feel the same way. Well, women do feel the same way walking into a group of women. That's why the whole intimidation factor, I don't think, is gender-based. It's just natural. It's just natural, especially with climbing. There's like all these big egos as far as who's stronger than who and who can do what. It's not gender-based. It's just like ego-based. Right. Everyone's kind of scared walking into a new environment and being like, oh, I don't know, like, I'm not comfortable here. I'm kind of scared, and it's easy to blame it on the fact that, oh, well, I'm a woman in a group of men, or I'm a dude and I'm a man in a group of women. Like, I just feel uncomfortable, but it's just human beings being uncomfortable in this weird situation.
Right, and the other thing too is that, like, if I been having climbed as long as I've been climbing, like, there's these behaviors, and I think they get sort of stereotyped when people sort of write about this issue or whatever, where it's that like gorilla guy and he's shirts off and he's like spraying bait at everybody, and like, that's not gender-based either. That guy's a douche. Yeah. Like, I think he is too. And he's not doing it necessarily to get on your nerves or to put you down. He's doing it to me. I mean, he's trying to get the whole group to like get into their place. He's the what do they call those big gray, he's the big silverback gorilla, right? Yeah. So, and it's funny I say that because, I mean, we're dealing with some of these same impulses. We just think since we're humans, they're like gone, but they're not gone. He's pounding his chest just as much for me as he is for women, and I find it just as problematic, to be honest with you. And so I just I like talking about this, and the reason I'm bringing my points up is because of what you said about this middle ground of, like, there are these gender issues. There are men and women who are being intimidated in, maybe even a slightly, sexual way or whatever. And that's not something to, like, blow off. But then there's also, attributing gender issues where they aren't, so
Right.
to speak. And
Yes.
like I said, the guy's a douche. Like we can all sit down in a group of women and men and agree. You know, that sleeveless dude with he's a jerk.
Yeah,
right?
he's not just being sexist.
Right,
he's
right,
just
exactly.
being total.
Well, interesting. I like I said, I'm always interested in talking to women climbers. I don't have as many on here as men, just out of numbers game, logistics game. But I'm kind of curious. And then the other question I had, and we'll kind of start to wrap it up, but going back to your competition, we were talking about sort of good parts and bad parts of this competition. Did you feel anything like specific in terms of pressures, you know, body image pressures or anything like that can come out of like these team games and these competition games? Because there is a parallel when you start thinking about like kids, boys and girls who are like climbing from a super early age. You know, then I'm always thinking of like the ballet prodigies and the gymnastics prodigies in terms of women and the pressures put on those kids. And I don't know if it's like as prevalent, but as I start to think about how many teams there are and how many competitions there are and how many crazy parents there are, that's got to be starting to happen in these climbing teams and these comp areas that are really big, you know. So did you have anything like that in your life, or did you see anything like that going on in terms of like that crazy, you know, reality show, like pressure on kids to perform?
Yeah, for sure.
Specifically girls.
Yeah, it's definitely more prevalent in these days, and will become more prevalent as climbing is taken more seriously as
now the Olympics. Now that you've got like
the Olympics
if we have an Olympic track, then, you know, that's where those stories come out of.
Yeah,
right?
And it's a product of that burning desire to win, to be the best. You know, how am I going to get that first place podium? What do I have to do? You know, you can train your ass off, but there are other things like dieting and like this fixation with food that can really affect performance as well. And the simple truth of rock climbing in general, whether it's youth or adults, if you weigh less, you're going to climb more easily. You don't have as much weight to carry around with you. And I've seen that concept being applied through crash dieting, through eating disorders. This isn't anything personal, so I don't want to really project opinions about it because I haven't personally experienced it. But I did have one time when I was a youth climber, and I was talking to one of my coaches, and you know, he it was coming from a good place. We were talking about what it would take to win, and he said, you know, you have to pay attention to your diet. You have to start thinking about what you put into your body, which is all true. But then he started saying things like, dieting will help you climb better. And he was using the word specifically dieting. Mm-hmm. And I was with my mom at the time, and I could tell she was a little upset with the fact he was using the word dieting, talking to a teenage girl. I was probably, I was like 13 or 14 at the time.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. I mean, it's fraught with danger.
Right.
At that age, yeah.
And my coach is also a vegetarian, very strongly opinionated vegetarian. So he's very conscious about what he puts in his body, and very proud of that, which is totally cool. But he started getting on my case a little bit about that. And we were at a restaurant, and I was getting a little upset at how forward he was with, you know, using the word dieting and such. So I decided to order a really big, juicy hamburger. And I proceeded to eat it in front of him just to prove a point. Mm-hmm. In that I was like, you know what? I'm not, I want to climb well and I want to do well in competitions, but I'm not going to obsess about my quote unquote diet. Right. I want to eat well, I want to eat healthy, but it's going to be part of my lifestyle. It's not going to be something that I will fixate in relation to competitions. And that's always been my mindset to this day. My training diet is I don't really have one. When I want to pay attention to my weight, I eat healthier foods. Mm-hmm. I'll pay attention to portion sizes. I'm one of those people that can eat everything in one sitting, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So when I'm training, I think, okay, I'm going to eat a smaller portion. I'll just pay attention to that a little bit more. But I've never fixated on calorie counting or anything like that, mm-hmm. because it's, I'm not disciplined enough, and I don't want to be that disciplined because I really like food and I enjoy myself in that way.
Right. And you're not competing right now?
No, I'm not serious.
I mean, you did the
Yeah,
comp
I did the
other day, but
competitions.
yeah, that was kind of a showcase comp here.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll be doing nationals in February. But competitions aren't my priority anymore.
Right.
This is a weird transition for me because competitions have always been a part of my life, and I'm finding it hard to step away from them because it's a habit at this point. Sure. Nationals comes around, I'm like, yep, it's nationals time again. Going to train and get in shape for that. But lately, I've been having less fun in the competitions.
Right.
The next generation is up and coming. They're all super strong. They've all been raised. Yeah, I'm aging out for sure. And it kind of sucks. It sucks to suck. And it's no fun when you're not doing well and when you feel like you're not doing well. And when I ask myself, I'm like miserable right now, why am I still doing this? And I think, well, it is fun to hang out with my friends and to like climb on all these new gym problems and compete in finals and stuff. But like at the end of the day, when am I going to stop doing this kind of
right.
these comps and like get outdoors, which is what I really actually want to be doing.
Yeah. So that's kind of my last question. So what is like, if you could climb tomorrow anywhere for a day, what would that day look like?
Oh man, anywhere in the world?
Sure.
So this is interesting. My first flash thought would be Rockland, South Africa, because it's my most favorite bouldering area. It's my favorite place on earth. It's so beautiful and amazing. But to be totally honest, my second thought would be Yosemite. Going out, trying Astroman, getting out on the wall, because it would be way more adventure style. And this is like this pull for me right now. Like I'm stuck in the middle with bouldering and tri climbing, or like getting outside or doing competitions, or like what. It's like I'm stuck in the middle right now, and I'm trying to figure out what I truly, truly want to do as a climber. So, and that's an ongoing question for me. So,
cool.
Again, flash thought would be Rocklands, but Yosemite's calling my name for sure.
Cool. They just evacuated it, though.
Shit.
Did you know that?
Of course I did.
Yeah. Anyway.
I heard Yosemite has a lot of flooding, right? Do you think the lightning bolt got washed off of Midnight Lightning?
I don't know. Somebody might have to go put it back on there. Cool. Well, thanks a lot for sitting down. We got interrupted, but we banged it out in true NormaCast, like racing around fashion. Thanks a lot for sitting down.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one last question, though, for you, because the Norma Nation needs to know this. You have a boyfriend? Is this correct these days?
I do have a boyfriend.
Flat out BF. And
Flat out,
what's
his
his name?
His name is James Lucas.
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks to Nina for sitting down and rolling with change of venue. And listen, if you guys enjoy the NormaCast and you want to support it, you want to help out, you can go to enormacast.com, my simple website over there. Click on the Help Out tab and follow the directions. Write a review. Like the Facebook page. Maybe if you're feeling stoked, donate a little money if you want. You can also check out our sponsors, including getting a discount at belayspecs.com or at peterwgilroy.com or at bonfirecoffee.com. All those places on the website. You can check it all out. Click on the banners for information. So a few bucks or a little work from a lot of people keep this thing afloat. So please consider helping out. Okay, get out there, have some fun in the spring weather here in the West, if that's where you're at. And don't forget to check your knot.
And he's going to stiff me. And I say, hey, Lama, hey, how about a little something, for the effort, And he says, there won't be any money. But when you die, on your deathbed, you will receive total consciousness. So I got that going for me, which is nice.